Get ready because we're celebrating 5 incredible years of the Main Health Show. It's more than just a hair show, it's a platform where we dive into topics that truly matter, just like your favorite barbershop or beauty salon. We cover a wide variety of issues that impact each and every one of us. Join me, Stephanie Anderson, host of the Main Health Show, as we celebrate 5 years of empowerment, education, and inspiration. Don't miss out on the incredible insights and transformative conversations that await you on the Main Health Show. Welcome to the Main Health Show. I'm your host, Stephanie Anderson, and today we are going to continue our conversation with Mr. Jason Frey. And on this episode, he is being joined by his lovely wife and partner, Mrs. Lorena Frey. Mrs. Frey is not a stranger to the Main Health Show. On a previous episode, she shared her experience and work as a human rights advocate for refugee survivors of trafficking. Lorena is a retired professional from the San Bernardino County Juvenile Justice Program, a licensed clinical therapist, and international speaker. With a Master of Science degree in counseling psychology, she passionately advocates for the human rights of children affected by generational abuse and trafficking. She has trained numerous clinicians, law enforcement officers, and community professionals on effectively supporting this vulnerable population. As a national speaker, she addressed the complex changes and challenges these children and trauma survivors face, including her notable talks, how you can break free from the shackles of trauma, which was her TEDx Bardell talk, and Trigger Warnings, the negative and positive debate, which was a global speakers talk presentation. Today, Lorna joins us alongside of her husband, Jason. They have been married for 30 years and have 2 children. During Jason's deployment as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom, Lorena used her psychology training to support their young children and the families of other soldiers in Jason's unit, showcasing her dedication to mental health and family support within the military communities. Please help me welcome them both back, Jason and Lorena Frey, to the Main Health Show. Hello, Jason and Lorena.
Hi, thank you for having us back.
Yes. Well, our previous episode, I had an opportunity to talk about your husband's illustrious career in both the military and law enforcement, and then his platform and what he does for PTSD. Today, equally important, I wanted to come on as well, even though you were a previous guest and you talked about the human trafficking. You guys do a lot. Do a lot. Yes, in serving the community and the people, vulnerable people who need your help. But today, I wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Jason and I talked about, and we're going to talk about the deployments that the military personnel goes on. We really don't think about it much, but when deployments happen for that service member, if they have a family, that family is left behind. And sometimes we don't wonder what happens during the deployment or what happens once that service member comes back. So I wanted to kind of have you to come in and you guys have a kind of conversation, discussion about what it is that you do to support those have done in the past, what it is that you guys have experienced, because you went on 3 deployments and had small children at the time.
Yes.
So kind of share what it is that you do for families. And
At the time that the war broke out, it was a new thing.
yeah.
The last war before that, before the Iraq War, was Vietnam.
Yes.
So from Vietnam to the Iraq War, society wasn't ready for a war.
Yeah.
So there were no support systems for that type, that I guess you can say the dynamics of what happens pre-deployment, post-deployment. And so pre-deployment was talking to families, and I remember because they were special operators, so couldn't talk about what they were going to do.
The mission,
We just knew they were going to be gone.
Yeah.
The war hadn't started.
Yeah.
And what happened was they left. And all we knew was they said, the famous military saying, no news is good news. To this day, it triggers me. I know he talked about triggers. It just triggers me.
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah.
But the military had us, actually they appointed me family support group leader.
Okay.
Jason was the youngest commanding officer at the time, actually, to go
Wow.
into that type of situation,
Okay.
a war.
Okay.
And so they thought, well, she has psychology background and
Okay.
she talks to people about problems.
Yes.
Let her do this. And I
Okay.
thought, okay,
Uh-huh.
how bad can it be, right?
Yeah.
There's no war going. I just
Yeah.
know that something's gonna happen and this is gonna be spectacular and wow, what a career opener.
Yeah.
I was not expecting what opened that door.
Wow.
They were already gone, and so now we hear there's a war. I'm like, oh my God, my husband's there.
Yeah.
And so one of the things they told us, particularly me, because I talked to the civilian spouses,
Yes.
don't promise your children that the soldier will come back.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I've got to do this.
Yes.
And then one time I was driving and I realized I'm talking about my husband and I'm talking about my children.
Yes.
And what am I going to tell them?
Yes.
So that kind of hit me. And I said, oh my gosh, how I'm feeling is probably how these spouses also.
Yes.
So
You were a spouse yourself in that situation,
Yes.
helping other spouses.
yes, and I
their
ended up
children.
calling them, supporting them through the process because I felt what I was feeling was the same thing they were going through.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, let's talk about kids. Now we had children that the news covered this horribly.
Yeah.
I mean, we
I
see it
remember.
happen now. We can't
Yes.
trust what they say.
Yeah.
So back then, it was very similar.
Yes.
They were reporting things that weren't actual.
Yes.
And because we were able to, no cell phones really at that time.
Yes.
It was very, the
Yeah.
the
Yeah, the
flippies.
old flip
I love
phones.
those. But
We're
so
dating ourselves. We remember it well.
so we were able to contact the Red Cross if there was any family emergencies.
Okay.
However, they had satellite phones that were able to call. There had time periods that
Okay.
we would talk to them, which was not often.
Okay.
So we had children that missed their dads and
Yes.
they weren't around, and very very few female soldiers went into the special operator or unit that he was in.
Okay.
But so it was a lot of moms that were home with young children. The young children are going to go through very many different stages.
Yes.
And so they were having problems in school. And the segment that you had with Jason,
Yes.
I recall you said, even in Vietnam, they were calling them, oh, they're out there, baby killers.
Yes.
Well, my son had an experience with that because not everyone was
supportive of the military.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, wow, you have your
Wow.
freedom to say what you want. And here's these guys dying for your
Fighting for your-
ability to do this.
Yes.
So our son was really had a
Wow.
hard time. The school, I can say they were partially supportive,
Okay.
but I think only when I got involved.
Okay.
And my kids can see that. They're like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
It was really hard because schools, teachers, they had to be involved with, I think, have the relationship of spouses whose husbands or wives
Yeah.
were deployed.
Yes.
Because otherwise they don't understand.
No
They're going to
frame of
listen to
reference.
the news.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's going to really, unfortunately, target the children.
Yes. Oh.
And so I had to step in. There was many children that were having difficulties in schools. They would hear things at school. They would hear things on the television. And so
How do you protect them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's really hard. So even now I say, we don't watch the news. We don't really watch TV much
Yeah.
because of that. So supporting your children through that is an awful lot of praying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just talking to them, asking them how they're feeling. Would make cards.
Okay.
And at that time, what I did know that they were I was tasked to do, which were the pioneers in bringing kind of like the video recordings
Okay.
of childbirths and different things like
okay.
because they didn't have
To
that.
keep them connected.
Yes. So we had some of the births
Okay.
happen with your unit.
Okay.
And we're able to get those recordings or have
Okay.
that soldier somewhere with a satellite phone during this
Yes.
happening. Yeah.
Oh,
So
That's
yeah,
amazing.
Yeah.
So I can imagine on the other end, someone on active deployment receiving a video of a birth or maybe being able to celebrate something going on at home
Yes.
was a positive distraction. What would you say, Jason?
Yes, and what we have to remember is with wars,
Yes.
it depends where you're at in the phase of the war
Okay.
as to what support is there.
Okay.
So for Iraq and the initial push, the invasion, there wasn't established mail services. It would take weeks.
Okay.
Phone connectivity wasn't there. So
Wow.
if you didn't have access to a satellite phone,
Right.
you didn't have any communication.
None.
And there was a lot of limbo-ness for the family. So then as things developed and more communication became, you could see the morale change.
Okay.
But here's another interesting part if you think about this. The soldier's role,
Okay.
he or she is deployed. They're in a combat
Or
environment.
yeah, they have a mission.
It is sometimes easier to be in war than to be back home.
Okay.
There, you have a very specific mission. Back home,
Yeah.
oh, it's changed. Mom, dad,
Yeah.
kids with needs and
Yeah.
wants and
Yeah.
different things like that.
Yeah.
Stresses from all
All
over
sides.
school, work,
Yeah.
hey, can you do this on top of that? The honey-do list
Yeah.
and all these different things.
Yeah.
And they're two very different mentalities.
Yes.
So whereas a lot of soldiers will actually disconnect. They're like, let me just stay focused on my mission there.
Okay.
And then I'll reintegrate when I come home.
Wow. Okay.
So kind of like if we think like a plug and play,
Yes.
well, I'll unplug.
I'll disconnect,
And
yeah.
I'm just going to be over there doing my job, and then
Yeah.
I'll just come back in. But what
Yeah.
they fail to remember is you talked pre-deployment, post-deployment, but there's deployment.
Yes.
There's that time frame. And whoever's home is holding the pieces together.
Yes.
And
That's-
day by day is changing.
Yeah.
Things are happening. So that soldier mentality of I'll come back and plug and play, they're coming back to a different atmosphere.
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
That
Yes.
spouse, those children, they've evolved.
Yes.
That soldiers had some changes as
Everyone
well.
has changed.
Yeah. And to speak to that, they come back when they left. It's almost like time stood still for them
Yes.
at that point. They come back, their kids are older
Older,
because they were a year. They were
Yes.
1 year
Wow.
out. So they come back. Some kids didn't recognize the parent because they were young. If they were 7 months old when
Yeah.
they left, 8 months,
Yeah.
they came back a year later.
Yeah.
Well, the
They
child's
don't-
grown.
Yeah.
Doesn't know, and we didn't have the cell phones that they could
Yes.
look at and stuff. So, or
Way different than now,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So for them coming back, and I thank God that I had that marriage family therapist background
Okay.
because I already knew. Well, if things happen, it's interesting because you think about someone that gets imprisoned. Their time stays still when they come back, and everything is expected
Same.
to be the
Yeah,
same.
they do.
But it's not because
It's
it's
not.
different.
Yes.
Same with them.
Even the spouse is different
Yes,
because you've had
yes.
responsibilities of being the
Both.
wife. I mean, being the parent, both parents, and
Yes.
so everything changes.
Yeah, and so I was able to talk to, I call them young wives, young
Okay.
spouses,
Uh-huh.
and let them know, okay, you know how things were before? It's going to be different.
Different, yes.
You can't throw it
Prepare
at
them.
them. Oh, you got to do this, 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 this. One thing that I did not prepare for
Okay.
was they were gone for a year.
Okay.
We were both father and mother. Were the disciplinarian.
Yeah.
And so things were going a certain way. The household was running.
Yes.
So they come in And all of a
It
sudden,
gets
especially when
disrupted.
you have babies,
It gets
it's like,
disrupted.
you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
No, this isn't.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was really hard.
Yes.
So go
That
back to the.
that reintegration back into the family.
And there was nothing to reintegrate because,
Yeah.
well, we had Vietnam. How
Yeah.
did that work? It didn't. So there
Yeah.
was that reintegration
Wow.
was like, okay, let's
You
do
learn
things
as you go.
different. Absolutely. And so for him coming back, it was like the kids, they would kind of look at me and look at him because now we have two different parenting styles.
Yes.
Because you have a soldier,
Yeah.
an
In
officer.
soldier mode.
Yes,
At
yes.
home.
And
Yes.
he had, in his position,
Yes.
he was over soldiers. He was commanding soldiers.
Yes.
He'd say something, get done. Well, you got kids that are
Just a little
6,
different.
7 years old.
Yeah.
You can't give an order, and that child's like,
Yeah.
yes, sir. So then
No
I'd
white
look-
glove inspections.
Yes.
but-
So it
yeah.
was kind of like, all right. So now you have kids that are confused. Who are you going to
Yeah.
listen to?
Yeah.
Who are you going to listen to? We
Yeah.
listened to mom for a year,
Yeah.
and now dad comes in.
Yeah, it's
And
different.
so taking his authority
Yeah.
in the household,
Yeah.
how does that work for
Wow.
mentality of an officer
Yeah.
that's high ranked, he's up here, he's commanding,
Uh-huh.
he's doing all of this, and then he comes home and it's like, no, what are you doing? Wait, did you fix that leak?
Yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Uh-huh.
And I think for the most part, a lot of the young wives, I still see that now.
Yeah.
They expect the soldier to come back and fall into exactly how they left before.
And they're tired
Yeah.
because they probably want to give some of the responsibility that they've been carrying as a double parent
Yes.
in their absence.
Yeah.
And it needs some time for them to be able to
Yeah.
reintegrate. I know I keep saying that word, but
Yeah,
it has
that
to
is
be
the
a
most
process
important. Yes.
that you just can't like, okay, you back, here's a baby, here's responsibilities.
Right.
That can't be done. It needs to be a process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a learning process
Yeah.
because so many things were being done differently or new things happened. You have a new baby, then
Yeah.
things are different.
Yeah.
Or we had some soldiers that came into the family
Uh-huh.
and they have a new child. It's like this child, they were born when you
Yeah.
were gone,
Yeah.
and that child's almost a year old.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
you have their baby afraid of them.
So the bonding. How
Yeah.
do you bond?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had to work,
Wow.
I had to work a lot with families to try and help them
Yes.
with that process.
Yeah.
And I had that. I was grateful with my kids. What I did, because of my background, I had read books.
Well, that's
and I
good.
thought, okay, I
Yes.
got to do something.
uh-huh.
We would go to church.
Okay.
And the kids would pick a teddy bear. And the teddy bear was dad.
Oh.
Yeah. So everywhere we went, we would
Yeah,
take a teddy
I
bear,
feel you. Yeah.
and it was dad.
Yeah.
So, and there were different situations where, what do you think Dad would think? Would say
Yes.
what? So if you were to ask my grown children now, 28,
I was going to say, how old are
29,
these babies now? They're grown
Yes.
with babies of their own.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Today we had a new one.
Yes, congratulations on the
you.
new
Thank
grandbaby
you.
today.
Yes.
Yes.
But
God is good.
trying to just make sure that they're still part of the soldier that's not there.
Yes.
Because that's important for them to know that there's no, and working with families with trauma, as you guys were talking in the other segment, is very important for them to feel that they're not abandoned, because that's their children. They don't
Yeah.
understand
They don't.
that
That
the parent did
sacrifice.
not leave them
Yes.
because something's more important than they
Yes.
are. And just try to make that soldier that's gone part of every daily life.
Yes.
There wasn't a day that went by that we didn't talk about Dad,
Yeah.
but in a positive way.
Yeah.
So to this day, the kids will, not that they didn't miss you, honey,
Yes.
but they didn't experience him missing out of
Because
their
you made
life.
sure that he was not there physically,
Right, right.
but you made sure that he was represented. Whether it was the dolls, the teddy bears
Yeah.
that they did, or the phone calls that you were able to get if they had an air phone,
Satellite,
a satellite phone or whatever. You did that to make sure that he wasn't. And there was a sacrifice on the part of the military member that deploys that a lot of people that doesn't experience that really don't know the level of sacrifice that
Oh,
is
yeah.
made by not only the service member,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the families of the service member. My heart broke when you just said that your child at that age, he's an adult now, but endured
Mm-hmm.
a negative name that his father was being called when he was
Yeah.
fighting for their freedom
I
of
know.
free speech.
I know. Yeah.
People really don't understand the day-to-day sacrifices of our military members.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a reintegration. So him coming back, I had to acknowledge that he was in charge of all of these people.
Yes.
And at home, I needed to kind of chill, back up,
Okay.
and let him breathe. So
Okay.
even with that, we're not thinking or acknowledging, oh, does he have PTSD? What happened? What's going on? And that's not part of it until we start noticing
Yes.
different, and the people living with the soldier are the ones that start noticing
Okay.
something's
okay.
different. And we like to say different, not wrong,
Okay.
because when you go something's wrong, it's like,
That's
okay,
negative.
yeah.
But it's different.
And
Yeah.
I want to say, so
Yeah.
if we look at the soldier,
Uh-huh.
they deploy. They're gone for 3, 6, 9 months, a year, whatever the
Yes.
duration of rotations are going now. And on the initial call up for Iraq, orders were actually for 3 to 5 years. They didn't know how long the war would
Wow.
last.
I didn't
And look
realize
back to
that.
World
Yeah.
War II. You know,
Okay.
they were long wars.
Yeah.
So there was an unknown. When the soldier gets that we're coming back home, now you have to go see the medical people and all that.
Yes.
And here's what we see. We have a culture within the military
Okay.
of you don't raise your hand and say there's a problem. Because now if you raise your hand, they go, oh, we're going to have to keep you from your family
Okay.
longer.
Yeah.
And they're like,
Wow.
no, I can't do that. You know, my spouse, my children,
Yeah.
they're waiting to see
Yeah.
me, and you're not going to go let me reintegrate with them because you
Yeah.
say I need observations, I need to do this. So what they do is,
They mask it.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
They check that block.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then they go back, and that's where the
It's
problems.
suppressed.
Yes.
It's suppressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's sad that you can't be open
No.
and say, you know, I need to talk to somebody because you will be penalized
Yes.
with the
Yes.
threat of not seeing your family or being able to, you know,
Yeah.
get back into society. That is just,
On top of
oh
that
gosh,
is,
Yeah.
as she mentioned, Special Operation Command.
that's a whole nother level.
So we look
Yes.
at security clearance
Yep.
and
Yes.
special missions.
Yes.
When you start to raise your hand, they, oh, we're
Not
going to
fit
have
for
to
duty.
pull you
Absolutely.
from your teams.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
those are another family.
Yes.
Literally, it's, you know, that's the soldier that I
Yeah.
will live and die
Yes.
with.
Yes.
And the
Like Band of
bond.
Brothers,
Yes.
that bond
And so if we look at that moral injury
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
I
Moral
cannot
injury,
let
yes.
them down.
Yeah.
And I was just recently talking to a former a Navy SEAL
Okay.
veteran who had actually done the combat and then the medic side of this.
Wow.
And then he's like, I'm done. I'm ready to do something else
Yes.
in the military. He didn't want out, but to
Yeah.
do something different. And what they found is they only report a fraction of what really happened to them because they know it'll be detrimental on their careers and they won't be able to be there. And as this individual said, be benched.
Yeah.
And so it's changing who they are, and I can't ask for help.
Right.
Because
And
I'll
s-
be penalized.
And so I'm going to try to go back into my civilian, not my civilian life, but my garrison life, we want to put it that way, back
Okay.
with spouse and children,
Uh-huh.
and try to keep this under wraps.
That's hard to navigate.
Exactly.
Because you need help, but you're
Yes.
afraid to ask for help because you'll be penalized for
Yeah.
asking for help. And
Yeah.
then you want to play like, you know, all is normal, but it's not. And you realize it's not. I mean, the service member realizes it's not, but they
Right.
can't. It's like a circle.
It
like
is.
You're doggone
It
if
is,
you
and
do,
it
you're doggone
continues.
if you don't.
And we were at a conference just not too long ago. I believe it was in April.
April.
And we're with IVAT in Hawaii.
Yes, Hawaii.
And so you have combat soldiers.
Yeah.
And then you have, we'll just say, these mental health people that will be out there somewhere saying that, oh, I'm a combat soldier. And so it's like, wait a minute. And literally, I was heated because I lived this.
Yes.
I've talked to soldiers.
Yes.
It's like, we will not talk to them because my career will be over.
Okay.
If they have a clearance, it's done.
Yes.
So then the families are the ones that are struggling
Ugly.
to try and keep life up with this soldier that needs help,
Yes.
but yet he won't get help. He's still in the military.
Yes.
And so what's happening here? Here, the disconnect is that, and I think Jason mentioned it in your other segment, that it's really hard for a service member. Two things. Number one is to get the help they need, and risking their security clearance, their job, their position,
career,
everything.
Yes.
And you could say that number two would be finding the right person to talk to.
Exactly.
Because if you go the way that they want you to, the way that they say, oh, we have all these resources, you know, for veterans, for combat veterans specifically, and no one's going unless you're no longer in that position. Then, and even then, it's really hard because of the stigma.
Yes, there's such a stigma.
Yeah.
And I've talked to different PTSD groups.
Okay.
And I think there's got to be two different dynamics they really look at. One is the service member who's out versus those who are in and redeploying and going through those cycles again. What I see is two complete different modalities of treatment.
Yes, absolutely. And that in itself, it's like, you know, you have these soldiers that are like, I don't need to deal with that. Or like he had said before, you get someone that's talking to you and they're trying to talk about what's affecting them. And you can see, I mean, these guys are trained to body language.
They can assess.
Look at,
They can assess.
and they right away pick it out. It's like, okay, right now you're judging me and it's not going to work.
So that causes them to like stay back and be.
And not get the help they need.
And if we think about this, think about the individual who's raising their hand saying, I am having a problem, versus the one who's not, and they're self-medicating through alcohol, drugs, or whatever vices. The one who's raising his hand, they would get the treatment. They would be returned back to service.
Wow.
If it all worked correctly.
If it worked in the correct way.
Yes, and
that's the ideal.
However,
and
what
even
they
that,
don't have faith in the system, so they go the other route. And what do we look at? We're looking at more divorces, more broken families,
domestic violence,
more suicides.
And the suicide rate has gone up tremendously because of the lack of I guess, openness to understand what these soldiers need, what they need to heal.
Again, this is such a meaty topic that really needs to be discussed, and we're pretty much out of time. Y'all gonna have to come back. But I mean, you know, it's just a serious subject. Not a lot of people are aware of it, and then those who need the help, learning that they're not getting it because they feel as though they're going to be penalized for it. And I know that you guys are doing so much. You talked about the IVAT and the different places international you're speaking at to be of help, that anytime you'd like to come back to our forum to sit down and talk, it's an open invitation too. Okay, so I know there's going to be somebody on at the show who's going to want to know. I know you've already shared with your contact, but for the benefit of this particular episode, if you can let them know how to get in contact with you guys, would you please share that?
Probably the easiest way would be contact me via email, and it's just going to be my name, Jason, Jason, .Frey, Frey, at Cal, CAL, Baptist, BAPTIST.edu. So jason.frey at calbaptist.edu.
And Lorena?
Oh, wow. Just try, if you know that your soldier's going to get deployed, try to see if you can. One of the things that I tell families is try to get some videos in, milestones, have the record your soldier saying happy birthday to your children, or the first day of school, or we have long-term videos that we kind of help the family through. Is you're dating, wow, here's some advice.
Yeah.
Or even, okay, so you're getting married and I won't be there. So yeah, I get emotional when I
feel it. I feel it. I feel
because
it.
it's real.
It's very real. It's very real. We're talking about real life. So that is going to be all, unfortunately, for this episode. They go by so quick because they're so good. But thank you for being here and spending time with us and sharing so much information, personal and professional information with us. So that's for this episode of Main Health. We invite you back for the next time. Take care and be blessed. I'm Stephanie Anderson. Bye-bye.